Hey y'all, it's Savannah, we're back, and today we're going to be talking about Democrats and their fake moral savior complex outrage when it comes to mass shootings and gun control. So this past week, there was another shooting, but it didn't make national headlines like normal because the shooter did not fit their white supremacy checklist. They were allegedly a part of the LGBTQ community, and they didn't use the classic scary black guns that everybody knows and hates. Instead, they used a handgun and a shotgun, not the semi-automatic, fully automatic 100 cartridge machine guns that the Democrats seem to know everything about. As horrible and terrible as this is, and as much as that shooter deserves to honestly rot in the deepest, darkest parts of hell, this does not stop the unhinged, crazy leftists of TikTok from going off on their absolutely mental rants when they have skipped on their Ritalin and their Adderall medicine. Now, I didn't see any single headlines about this. The only reason I even know about it is because somehow I managed to get on the wrong side of TikTok, and I saw Headline Harry and his little sidekick, Chris Mowry, use their fake savior complex outrage to talk about how dangerous every gun is and how we need to get rid of every single one of them now. So let's watch a car rant, because if I had to lose brain cells, so do you. Before we actually watch this video, if God has blessed you enough to not have to witness any of these guys' videos on TikTok or Instagram, these influencers are Gen Z bought by the DNC, literal clone bots of the army of liberals and raging hormones, but they don't know what gender they are. Harry Sisson has almost 700,000 followers, and Chris has around 200. So these are actually very influential people that are affecting and changing my generation, as easy or complicated as that should be. Okay, so let's just get straight into this video, y'all.
There's another school shooting today, and this is a reminder to stop debating Republicans on gun control. Just stop. It doesn't matter. Look, Democrats have a host of solutions. Universal background checks all the way up to banning certain types of weapons, banning large capacity magazines, all this stuff. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Tell Republicans, look, fine. None of this works. None of it works. You want to keep your guns? Fine. What's your solution? Period. That's what you got to start asking. That's the real question. What's the solution to a massive amount of Americans dying every single year from firearms, especially young people? One of the leading causes of death for children in the United States is firearms. What's your solution? Ask Republicans that question. They'll say, well, I think the problem is mental health. Perfect. What's your solution? What is the bill that we can pass through Congress that will solve this issue? Silence. They've never thought any further than that. Sometimes people tell me the issue is we need more guns. Okay, perfect. What's the legislative process there? How do we legislate that? None. Silence. They've never thought any further than that. Why?
There
you
should
can
not
break
be.
it down to a point of they do not have any solutions. They are more interested in 2A and being constitutional fundamentalists than saving lives. They have no solutions, not one. Screw gun control. Ask them what their solution is to this. They have none. Zero.
Okay, so we love a raging liberal that's only argument is their emotions and how they feel in that moment. So this guy says that he had so many different solutions for gun violence and school shootings in America, and then he only mentioned one, and it's something that we already have. And guess what? We law-abiding citizens have to go through that process every single time. But you know who doesn't? Criminals. It's kind of in the definition. They're criminals because they don't follow the laws, so it doesn't matter how much legislation you pass, they don't plan on listening to you. Do you Democrats actually think that because you guys pass laws that say, you know what, if you're a felon, or if you do this, or XYZ, or you went to this capital on this specific day that you don't get guns, that people are magically going to want to be like, yes, we will listen to you, our masters? No, that's kind of the point. So now that we've all equally lost brain cells together, let's go through this.
Look, Democrats have a host of solutions. Universal background checks all the way up to banning certain types of weapons, banning large capacity magazines, all this stuff.
The one and only point that this dude made was that we should have universal background checks. Hate to break it to you, but every single state has their version of that. And you know what? Some of the deepest, darkest blue states like California and Illinois that has an entire slew of laws and red tape and hoops that we have to jump through in order to have our Second Amendment have some of the worst gun violence. But guess what? Red states that actually allow their citizens the ability to defend themselves and their family and their property, we don't have as much gun violence because criminals don't purposely go to the places where they know that people can actually protect themselves. And before anybody goes, well, what about private sales? The government can't track those. And maybe they shouldn't. Because does government overreach get to insert their dirty little nose in every single aspect of our lives when they literally lose nuclear subs and weapons and billions of dollars, yet they get no slap on the wrist for that? If we're going to start tracking Americans for purchasing or selling anything that can cause damage, then I say let's start tracking people that, purchase fertilizer and U-Haul trucks. Because we all know about the Oklahoma City bombing of 1995, right? That didn't even involve a gun. So Chris's only options are universal background checks, which we already have, or ban all assault weapons. But I ask you this, what is an assault weapon? So if I assault my dog with a banana, does that automatically become an assault weapon now? Because right now, according to the law, using, A to B logic thinking, that actually is an assault banana. These people staying true to the liberal leftist logic can't define their terms. Therefore, they don't really know what an assault weapon actually is because it technically now could mean anything. A handgun, a revolver, a banana, fertilizer, a U-Haul. Lord knows what's the limit to this. Another Democrat talking point is that they say that we don't need a magazine or a drum that can hold 100 clips in it because those can do a lot of damage and it's really dangerous for people to be able to have because it's not like I could sit here and reload a handgun with every single clip that I have in my backpack, my duffel, or just straight up in my pocket. Oh, wait. So speaking of your handguns, or aka your sidearms, if the Democrats, by some gift from Satan, get their way and ban the scary weapons and black mass destruction rifles, and they get rid of all of those, that still begs the question then of why then do 78% of all mass shootings and or gun-related deaths are caused by handguns, not the scary black rifles, semi-fully automatic assault weapons in question?
Question. What's the solution to a massive amount of Americans dying every single year from firearms, especially young people? One of the leading causes of death for children in the United States is firearms. What's your solution? Ask Republicans that question. They'll say...
So his next claim is that gun violence is the leading cause of death for our generation today. So let's go straight into these numbers, shall we? First thing right off the bat is they look a little suspicious. So if you automatically just take away all of the suicides, because quite frankly that shouldn't be included in gun violence, let's go straight into the homicide. And then when you go look at the age, it is a little interesting that the 18 and 19-year-olds are lumped together with the quote-unquote children. If you had to ask me, I would say those numbers are put in there to, hike them up just a little bit. Because it's probably these 18 and 19-year-olds that are usually involved with, some gang violence, some probably unsavory company when it comes to criminals. So if we actually do just a little bit more digging, you will realize that the actual leading cause of death for young people are accidents, things that you couldn't stop from happening. Let's look at more numbers that are filled with lies and just go straight into the CDC with Johns Hopkins that says gun suicides continue to reach an all-time high. 48,000 lives were lost due to gun violence in 2022, but 27,000 of those were suicides. And I don't think, like I said, those should be included with gun violence because let's be honest, I think this might point to the fact that we have more mental illness issues in this country than we particularly want to admit. And it might have something to do with the fact that we're pushing all these mental illnesses and disorders on children at such a young age. So excluding the 27,000 suicides, let's look at the other 20,000 deaths that involved guns every single year. So 71% of those victims had previous arrest records, 74% had been convicted of crimes, and 74% of the homicides that were, as a felony was being committed and involved a gun. And I would just like to remind everybody out here that in these numbers of the gun deaths, they also include a cop does a clean shoot against a criminal, a dad protects his family during a home invasion, a woman defends her life against a rapist or a sexually assaulter. And you know what? Some of those were justified and clean shoots, but they're still included in this because it's still technically a death. So like usual, when you add a little bit of context and research and looking beyond the headlines, you actually realize that maybe these numbers are slightly inflated and they're a little bit suspect, possibly to push an agenda, you might say.
What is the bill that we can pass through Congress that will solve this issue?
And the next point was, well, what legislation can we pass to fix this? Maybe there doesn't need to be legislation. You already have the Second Amendment. If you want the ability to defend yourself, your family, or property, go right ahead. I encourage you to do that no matter what side of the aisle you're on. But then on the mental illness thing, does our government and law actually need to be involved in that? Maybe instead of looking to the government to fix all of our own personal issues, maybe we could come together as a community or a family to help each other through some of the darkest times that this country has seen. 2020 wasn't easy on anybody, but our government and politicians definitely do not have the best fix for that. The last time a government got involved trying to fix its people's mental crises, people got sent to Auschwitz, and people like the angel of death became a very common practice. But then Chris says that Republicans don't think anything past just mental illness. Well, maybe if you actually, taught your kids the value of life, people actually would, care about each other a little bit more. Maybe if both parents were involved in kids' lives and the morality and the upbringing of them, you wouldn't have them be as whacked out as they were. Maybe if we sent our kids into a family unit instead of off to the government to be indoctrinated, they would actually know right versus wrong. Maybe, just maybe, if we as a country kept the pillars of morality still there, we wouldn't be questioning the basics and the definitions of things that have been black and white for years, like what is a woman? What is the value of life? And y'all whine about there are no other solutions. Actually, there are. You guys just don't want to hear them. Number one being, let's arm our teachers to protect our most valuable resource that we have. Don't make it mandatory. Just see who already has their license to carry permit and allow them to do so if they want to defend the lives of their children in those classrooms. And if a teacher doesn't want to be armed, what if we had an armed guard stationed outside the school? Most schools and a lot of private schools already do that. And guess what? They don't usually have disasters like this happen because criminals don't go to places where they can be stopped. Or, you know what? We have so many veterans in America that would like nothing better than to go protect these kids. They're already very well trained. They already have a lot of safety. And guess what? They're comfortable with it and they will happily do it. I literally know hundreds of veterans at American Legions and USOs who would literally do this out of the kindness of their heart in their retired days. But if you also wanted to give them a decent wage, what if we didn't send $100 billion to Ukraine and we used that to protect our own children instead? This is why I don't believe Chris or Harry or David Hogg when it comes to their fake moral outrage when it comes to these kind of shootings. Because if you actually did care about, protecting people and saving lives, you would be doing everything you possibly can to defend the ones that you love and the people around you. And criminals don't follow laws. So the only way that you're ever going to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. But you know what? They don't want to talk about that because the vast majority of these gun deaths and this gun violence happens in people of color Democrat cities with blue mayors in deep blue states with blue governors with the most gun control and red tape laws imaginable. But you don't want to talk about that. For instance, in the past 72 hours alone, 66 people have died due to gun violence, but nobody wants to talk about that, especially liberals, because it doesn't fit their narrative. If we're going to be outraged, we need to be outraged equally across the board, not just in the cherry-picked instances that work best for our statistics and cases. And staying true with the fake moral outrage, last year, America had an all-time high for lethal overdoses when it came to all of the drugs that people ingested out of their own free will, and that was 112,000. Where's the outrage for this? Because I can promise you, people like Harry and Chris, they definitely support that open border that is the literal cause of why there are so many young people to this day taking these overdoses of drugs because they didn't realize what concoction came from Mexico. The point of all this is that the liberals with their fake moral outrage need to stop. Or if you are going to be outraged, let's be outraged across the board equally and not just in the cases that work best for us. My conclusion and solution to all of this is if you want the ability to defend yourself against a criminal, do it. because they're not exactly going to follow the laws. They're not going to stay true to the signs that say gun-free zone, and they aren't certainly not going to place your life above their own. When it comes to the Second Amendment, it was very clear that shall not be infringed was the main point. And our founding fathers were pretty smart people. It wasn't written so the deer would not be able to uprise against us. It was created so a free people could defend themselves, their families, and their homes against whoever tried to trespass against them, even if that did become a tyrannical government.